as a follow-up question to that, it's gonna, you're walking into a mess. It's not gonna be easy to do this. And we are here, if you were to get an endorsement, to support you and also to keep you accountable.
Yes.
That's our part. But it's gonna take more than you to do this, to make it work. So how will you use your transition planning team to process and ensure that this long-term focus is part of your administration? And who will you work with to make this happen?
Yeah, well, I think the answer is I'm going to work with everybody that was there as part of this movement to make this transition in the different aspects and strengths that they can bring to this thing. One of the things that I thought was really great at the Take Action Minnesota dinner that was a couple weeks ago was when Dan McGrath was talking about transactional versus transformational leadership. And what that really was about was building new kinds of partnerships. You know, it's not just about cutting deals at the Capitol, but it's bringing people together in new and different ways. And I think that's the kind of leader I've been. You know, when I was called down to Hastings to march on the picket line with SEIU, I didn't just go down and meet with the union, but I actually called up the president of the hospital and said, you know, this problem is going on, can I meet with you as well? And I think so it's bringing everybody to the table and being willing to listen to people that might disagree with you. And that's the thing that this governor has really failed at, is he won't listen to people that disagree with him. So it's going to be about bringing you in, but it's also going to be about me holding you accountable and challenging you, because these are going to be tough times, and some of your oxes are going to be gored as well, in a sense, as we move out of this. And so it's having the support all the way around. Sorry.
Thank you.
Now we have time for our questions from the floor. So I think we're going to start with Paul.
Okay, I have worked on ag issues at the Capitol since 1985 farm crisis. So what's happened these past years is an increasing dominance of metro-based corporate agribusiness to commodity groups like pork producers co-opted by corporate interests. What's happened at the farm gate is that the family farmers continue to have to do more with less. One bright spot in agriculture has been increasing demand for sustainable and organic agriculture. This last year at the legislature, the overall ag budget got cut 8%. Sustainable and organic agriculture got cut over 70%. Question, what will you do as governor to put the interests of family farmers before metro-based agribusiness interests? What skills and background and vision do you want your ag commissioner to have?
Well, that's another great question. A couple things that I would say to that. The first thing on the organic thing, I think that the big challenge that we have there is actually to get people to have the capital, small family farmers to have the capital to be able to take their regular farm and turn it into organic farm, because there are a lot of loopholes you got to get through, hoops you got to jump through. I think that's something that the state can really step in and help on. But from your bigger issue, you know, I go around the state and the toughest question that I get is, in these small towns, how are we going to keep our towns alive? And the way that we're going to keep those small rural towns alive is by having 10 family farms surrounding them instead of 2 large corporate farms, because those 10 farms are going to go and shop in the stores in those towns. And so the way I think that will be important to me as I think about an ag commissioner and as I deal with this issue is to think about, you know, family farms are not just this romantic notion of the past of, you know, how we want to operate things. It's healthier, it's, you know, better in a lot of ways, environmental ways and everything, but it's also an economic development issue. And I think if we can talk about making sure that our whole state is prosperous, and the way we keep our whole state prosperous is by helping keep people, family farms on the land, I think that's a much more powerful way to kind of think about it and speak about it. The other big issue we have to have, and this relates to a bigger issue that's really important to me, which is the age wave, is that our family farmers, our farmers are old. You know, they're in 50, 55, 60 years old on average. We need to find a way, and this is another role for the state to step in, to support a new generation of farmers to come on the land, to provide them the capital and the resources to be able to actually buy some land, to buy the equipment, to stay there, and to raise their families there as well. So I think the key thing is we have to understand that agriculture doesn't just end at the gates of the farm, the borders of the farm, but it affects all of us, it affects our entire economy, and it affects all of us in our everyday lives. And it's a Minnesota issue, not just a rural issue.
So our next question will come from Colleen.
Hi, I'm Colleen Morris from White Bear Lake, Toastmaster, political blogger, and MDH employee. Oh, I think you already know there's over 4,000 homeless veterans in Minnesota. Many of them are not eligible for veterans benefits for one reason or another. Our vision rejects the idea of anyone being homeless, having to sleep out in the cold in Minnesota. All veterans should be able to get their benefits and not be left out of their basic needs. What precisely is your plan to provide basic necessities for all veterans?
Yeah, well, a couple of things. The first bill that I ever did in the State House, there was actually an amendment to defeat a Republican idea to say that if you don't have an address, you couldn't get benefits. And homeless veterans obviously don't have an address, and so they were going to be excluded from their benefits. And I took an amendment and beat the Republicans, who were the majority at that time, in keeping those, at least the benefits for those homeless folks in place. The things that I think that we have to do, and this whole issue of homelessness is a much bigger issue than just for the veterans as well. And the answer, and it's also at the heart of everything, of really everything we have to change. I mean, when we talk about the general assistance medical care, when we talk about the inability of people to do well in school, it all comes down to having a stable home. And so I think the work that is being done around supportive housing and making sure that it's just not putting someone in a home, but actually having the supports surrounding that person so that they can have stability and stay in that home in the long term. And I've carried legislation, about $60 million we could, essentially end homelessness in this state by providing that kind of supportive housing with legislation that I'm carrying and working on with some people in this room again. That is the answer to solving a lot of our problems. So I think making that relatively small investment for homeless veterans, but also for homeless people in general and homeless families is the answer to that, and it's going to save us a ton of money in healthcare costs and education costs and a whole variety of things if we can get that accomplished. And so this is something that I'm really passionate about. As we think about GMC, the piece I keep pushing is to include supportive housing as part of the benefit set that those folks would get, because that really is going to stabilize people's lives. We got to move people from living lives in crisis, where they're thinking just 2 days ahead, to thinking 30 days ahead, where they have some stability, and that will solve so many problems. And so really thank you for asking that question. I don't know if I hit it specifically, but I do think that this issue of getting people into house is one of our biggest jobs.